Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. It's news that's nightly about the Redskins. Welcome to the Redskins Nightly News. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So I wanted to switch the game up a little bit tonight. And before I even get into the show, let me first start by saying nothing has changed, all right? I did throw in a little audible, but plans are still as we set them yesterday. We're going to have the open forum tonight at 8 p.m., okay? I just wanted to get some of the ancillary stories and topics out of the way so that we don't have to waste time doing that tonight. Now, if you guys want to bring it up, that's on you. But I just wanted to get them out of the way, talk about them here on this program so that it will open the floor for you guys and allow you to talk about things that you probably want to talk about. Now, I'm not touching the D'Angelo Hall GM thing. If you want to touch that later on tonight, I'm all for it. We can talk about it then. I'll leave that for you guys to decide if you want to talk about it later on tonight or not. But I want to start the show off tonight with what we usually do in our in other news segment, which is post-practice pressers. And we had on Wednesdays, as we always do, the interim head coach Bill Callahan stepped to the mic. So did quarterback Dwayne Haskins. So I want to talk about what was said by both of those gentlemen. And then we'll get into in other news, talk about some Redskins news that happened over the last 24 to 48 hours. And then we'll move on and get out of here. So let's start with Bill Callahan. And then we'll get to the more juicy topic of discussion, and that's what Dwayne Haskins had to say. So Callahan talked about wanting to get off to faster starts, and that's been a bugaboo of late. He says, I'm sick and tired of these slow starts. Last 2 weeks, the Redskins have dug themselves 14-point holes. They were able to dig themselves out of that deficit 2 weeks ago versus Carolina. Not so much last week versus Green Bay. And he says they need to start faster. Even going back a month ago when they lost to the Jets, what was that score at halftime? Was that 21-3 at halftime? 21-6, something like that. So they've been pretty bad to start these football games. He wants to get off to a faster start. Who doesn't? I mean, you can't really have the best chance to win when you dig yourself a hole like the Redskins have done the last couple of weeks. If they can come out and start a little faster, it will give them an opportunity because they haven't been really bad after the poor starts. It's just been these starts that have dug them holes, and we're just not good enough as a team to overcome a 14-0 deficit, no matter when that game or that deficit comes. We did it 2 weeks ago, but against teams that are better than you, and you would assume that the Eagles are better, the Cowboys are better, and not so much the Giants, but you just don't want to fall behind 14-0 to any of these teams. And so he talked about that. He talked about some injuries and some guys coming back. He really does, as you know, he doesn't want any part of the injury talk. But Paul Richardson did practice today, so I'm a little torn with that because on one end, I'm like, oh, cool, Paul Richardson back, another target for Dwayne Haskins to throw the football to, because I talked about it last week. We just don't have enough out there. You know, when you take away Terry, he looks for Sims and Harmon. After that, Chris Thompson is probably the only other option that he has to throw the football to. When we start throwing it to Jeremy Sprinkle, then you probably have a problem at that point. So another target is a welcome target. But at the same time, I want as many snaps for Kelvin Harmon as possible. He and Paul Richardson Jr. play the same spot on the field, so I'm thinking that's going to reduce the amount of opportunities for Harmon, which I'm just not on board with. So I'm kind of torn, but at the end of the day, they'll figure out a way to get their players on the field. And look, the more the merrier. We need Richardson back. It gives Dwayne another target. He actually had a good rapport with him in that Buffalo game, if you remember. So we'll see what happens there. But he talked about, some of the other injuries, talked about the disappointment of guys going on IR. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. He also talked about Adrian Peterson and his affinity for him, and how, the absence of guys now is going to open up more opportunities for Adrian Peterson. And he thinks the world of him. He said he can't, have enough accolades for Adrian Peterson and what he means to this team and what he's done over the life of his career. He talked about the NFC East and some of these games that we have left. And he said, look, man, we haven't performed well in the division. We need to perform better against these teams. We've lost our last 5 versus Philly. Remember, we were on a streak versus the Eagles. Up until I want to say it was last year, or 2 years ago, excuse me. We had a winning streak of like 6 or 7 straight versus the Eagles, and now we can't beat the Eagles to save our life. It started at the beginning of the 2018 season. It came into FedEx week 1, had them on the ropes, let them off the hook. They beat us in that game. They ended up sweeping us that season. They swept us last year, and now, or that was 2017. And then they swept us last year in 2018. We all remember week 17. No one really cared at that point, but still, Monday night last year, if you recall, we were right there in the divisional race. Colt McCoy goes into that game. We just lost to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Then we get the Monday night game. We're still in first place, but that was a big game. Colt McCoy injures himself relatively early in that football game. We get Dirty Ches. The rest is history. And so we lose the first game of the season this year, had a lead on them in the first half, blew that. So we haven't been able to beat the Eagles, and he talked about that, and he talked about having to perform better in the division versus the Cowboys and the Giants, and that rings true. I'm sick and tired of losing to the teams in the division. I can't tell you the last time we actually won a divisional game because we finished up the season last year, lost to the Eagles in week 17. I think the last time we won a game in the division was the Cowboys game, if I'm not mistaken, last October. I'm trying to think, did that game come prior to the Giants game in the Meadowlands, or did it come after? Either way, it's either the Giants game on the road last year where we pretty much destroyed Eli but had to have a late game Adrian Peterson 60-yard touchdown run to really put that game on ice, or it's the clank off the upright by Maher to preserve the victory 13-10 at the crib. Either way, we haven't been good in the division. We haven't been good enough. We lost to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving last year. We lost to the Eagles on Monday night last year. We lost to the Eagles again on week 17, final game of the season, when they took over the stadium, which could possibly happen again this week. And we lost to the Giants in what was probably the ugliest game of the season last year, and the one where I called for everyone's head to roll at halftime of that game because we were already down like 36-0 or something along those lines at halftime of that game. So it's been bad in the division. He talked about that, and rightfully so. We need to be better against the teams in this division. He also talked about Dwayne, and he said, look, Dwayne looked good at practice today, and no injury problems there. And I was wrong. Let me go ahead and state that right now. I thought Dwayne, first of all, I thought it was a high ankle sprain. Those are a lot harder to come back from than a low ankle sprain. A regular ankle sprain, you get some treatment, you stay off your foot, the swelling goes down, you're fine. High ankle sprain, a lot harder to treat. Generally, the only thing that heals those are time. Yeah, the treatment helps, but it's a lot tougher to perform on a high ankle sprain, which is what Daniel Jones got last week, not what Dwayne had this past week. So looks like he's full go, and I was absolutely wrong because I didn't think he was going to play, and because of that, I said, what's the purpose of watching this game? And I thought that game was going to be against the Giants. I was wrong. We're playing the Eagles this week, play the Giants the week after, and then the Cowboys to finish up. But he's going to play, so everything's good. I feel good about that, and he talked about that and said Dwayne's fine. He looked great in practice, this, that, and the third. So you get to Dwayne and what he had to talk about, and I think one of the first things that jumped out at me was the 2-minute conversation, the 2-minute offense, the up-tempo was one of the first questions they led off with. And they asked, hey, look, man, are you more comfortable in that offense? And if so, why? He said, yeah, I'm not necessarily more comfortable as much as I just like the opportunities that present themselves in that up-tempo offense. And then, they followed up, well, why is that? And he's like, well, the defense doesn't get to sub-personnel. Whatever is in the game is in the game. So a lot of times it's base. If base or nickel is in, they stay in. And they don't get to do anything exotic, and so it makes a lot of sense. Why he's looked so much more successful in the up-tempo is because the defensive coordinator isn't able to give him a complex look. He's not able to change it up and send a guy here, drop a guy there, and confuse Dwayne. It's basic coverage generally when you're on the go. When you're on the fly, it's cover 3, it's cover 2, it's cover 4. It's something basic, man-to-man. You can't get too exotic. Can't have a zone dog blitz. You can't have blitz on one side, man on the other side, or you can't make it look like man, guys going across the formation with him, and then they drop into cover 3, and all of a sudden you thought you had man, but now it's cover 3. It's hard to do those things when you're just you're getting a basic call, all right? When you're in cover 2, every team's got basic calls. You go up, you signal to the guys, you let them know what the call is, and they've got universal calls, and then everybody's on the same page. So it's easier for Dwayne to go out there and decipher what's going on, and there's not as much complexity to what's being thrown at him when the defense is on their heels, and that's, I think, why he likes it so much, and he pretty much said as much. So makes a lot of sense. He talked about that. He also talked about the rapport that he has with Steven Sims, and says, yeah, it's a lot easier when you know a guy's going to win and separate, and you can get him the football. And that's what Steven Sims has done. And that's why you've seen Steven Sims have an uptick in targets the last couple of weeks, because he's a guy that wins and wins quickly. And in this league, the guys that win quick are the guys that get a lot of targets. And that's why Steven Sims has been seeing a lot of footballs come his way of recent weeks. He also talked about the loss of Darius Guy. He said, yeah, we love AD and what he brings to the table. But, we were starting to really have a nice 1-2 punch back there. And, Darius brought a energy and a toughness and a physicality to the backfield that we're going to miss. And so he talked about that. Talked about, what he's looking forward to in these final 3 games. He said, look, NFL locker room doesn't stay the same from year to year. A lot of these guys aren't going to be here. So I'm looking forward to playing with these guys for the remaining 3 weeks of the season. He said, I'm also looking forward to having fun, playing against these teams in the division, and getting better. So, he talked about that. Talked about the ankle. Obviously, that was the elephant in the room. Got to address that. He said he was fine. Look, the way he was limping around, you would have thought that this was a serious injury. I mean, at times, he couldn't even get to the handoff to Adrian Peterson. And now, all of a sudden, it's like nothing's wrong. No one's talking about it. It's just amazing. Generally, when you see an ankle injury that severe, remember Aaron Rodgers had an injury last year, and he wasn't right for like a month. All right. Over time, he didn't get hit on the ankle, and he was able to kind of stay in the pocket, and it got better, but he kept playing. But generally, when you see a guy limping around the way that he did in that game, he's not right the next week. It seems like there are no limitations. So for whatever it's worth, he said, I'm good. He didn't really want to talk about the ankle injury. He said, I wasn't coming out of the game again. So he reiterated that, made it seem like the ankle wasn't a big deal. It seemed like a big goddamn deal, but apparently it's not one now. So he did talk about that. And he also talked about, his first season, all the things that he's learned, all the things that he's seen. And he said, look, right now I'm just trying to get better each and every single week. I'm trying to learn how to lead these guys as a young player in a locker room full of grown men. I'm just trying to learn how to lead. He says, but, eventually down the road, I'll worry about going out and being elite. But right now, I'm just trying to get better. And that's all we can ask of him is week after week, show progression, not make the same mistake. Callahan alluded to that at his presser, that Dwayne is a guy that doesn't make the same mistake twice, and that he's a guy that learns on the fly. And so these are all things that we've seen, we've talked about, and we want to see him continue to mature, progress, and continue to go out and make plays. And that's what Dwayne talked about. That's what Callahan talked about. That's what we're looking to see on Sunday versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's get to in other news before we wrap up this show. And so a couple of things. I just want to rattle off a few items. Darius Geis to IR. So that happened yesterday. Right after I finished the show, it was announced formally that Darius Geis would be placed on IR. So we dodged a bullet, and I told you guys that I didn't think it was anything major. I didn't think it was a torn Achilles or torn MCL, ACL, or any of that. I told you, generally speaking, and I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn, and I'm no doctor, and I know you guys had some jokes in the comment section a couple shows ago because I talked about a number of different injuries, even though I didn't know exactly what they were. But I'm a professional football watcher. I've told you this before. I've seen enough football, and I've seen reactions to guys in their injuries to know what something is and the severity of it. Now, I was wrong about Dwayne Haskins, all right? I was not wrong about Kerrigan in terms of him playing, and I don't know if he'll play the remainder of this season. I thought it was an Achilles. It sounds like it's just his calf. Great. That is great news. I was hoping that it wasn't, because at his age, at this stage of his career, going into a contract season, it would not have been a good look for Ryan Kerrigan to be nursing an Achilles injury. But sounds like it's his calf. He's not playing versus the Eagles. That is a definite. He is out. But beyond that, they haven't said much about Kerrigan, but it doesn't sound like it's anything major, just a calf strain, which is all we could have hoped for, and we got that with Darius Geis. I told you I didn't think it was anything major, like a torn anything. It looked like a strain, a sprain of something, and because he came back out, and he didn't come back out on crutches, and he didn't come back out dejected, even though he's an upbeat guy. You tear something, first of all, you're not coming back out on the sidelines. If you tore something, you come back out on the sidelines, you're usually coming back out with crutches. You're coming back out on crutches, and you're going to be telling guys, yeah, I did this, I did that. But generally, guys stay out in the locker room. One of the few times I can remember a player tearing something and then coming back to the sidelines was Dick Sherman on a Thursday night versus the Arizona Cardinals when he was still in Seattle, when he tore his ACL, and he came back on the sideline and told all his teammates, basically, yeah, I tore my ACL. You could see him lip reading to his teammates, or you could see him saying it to his teammates, and you could read his lips saying he tore his ACL. So rarely do players come back to the sidelines when they've torn something, but he looked like a guy that sustained a sprain, and that's what they are calling it right now, an MCL sprain. He's been put on IR. He's done for the season. I told you we were going to be done with him for the rest of the season. And you know what? I'm happy that he's done for the rest of the season. Obviously, I didn't want to see him get injured. But you know what this means? For the first time in his career, he's going to be able to spend an offseason just getting better. All right? That MCL sprain is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to heal. By the time this season meets its conclusion, he'll either be 100% or near 100%. A couple of weeks after the season's done, all right, once we get into the divisional round of the postseason, he will be 100% outrunning, cutting, jumping, doing everything as normal. And you know what he'll have? He'll have the entire offseason, all 4 months of it, to just get stronger and faster and better. Something he hasn't been able to do since he's entered the league, essentially. He's always been nursing something, always trying to strengthen one of his legs. He's always been working on trying to get back. Ever since he tore his Achilles or ACL, I believe it was, in the Patriots game two preseasons ago. So, and then last year, we all know about the injury that he sustained again. So what we're looking for from Geis is we're just looking for health from him. All right. So, or last year was the ACL, and this year he's been dealing with a number of different things. We just want him to be able to prepare for the season and get stronger, and he's going to be able to do that this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like next year, but he's on IR. He's done for the season. Simeon Thomas, I'm really disappointed in him getting suspended for testing positive for a substance in the league banned substance list. I'm disappointed in him. This was an opportunity for a young guy to get some snaps at the end of a season, to get a look, to put film out there, even if he's not going to be a Redskin moving forward. I actually thought he did some solid things. For him to get suspended with 3 games left, and also that's going to run into next year for the first game of the season, really disappointing. He's hurting his chances of staying in this league. You don't get these kind of opportunities very often where you're playing on a team that's giving you a chance to play. Simeon Thomas was just on the practice squad of both the Browns and the Seahawks. We poached him, and he got an opportunity to start. And he's going to squander it by taking a banned substance? Come on, dude. Like, I'm really disappointed in him. He's throwing away a golden opportunity to prove that he can play in this league, and I don't know what's going to become of him. I could easily see him being cut loose this offseason with the amount of cap space the Redskins are going to have, and I think some of the moves they're going to ultimately make in the draft. I could see the Redskins attacking the cornerback position aggressively and addressing that as a major need in the offseason, and a guy like Simeon Thomas not being around after, missing these really good opportunities, these golden opportunities, these final games of the season to play and showcase his skills. Really disappointed that he's suspended. And now Danny Johnson is going to be elevated from the IR list onto the active roster to take Simeon Thomas's place on the roster. We'll see what Danny Johnson looks like. Last year, he did not finish up the season very well before he got injured. And then I talked about Kerrigan, and I talked about Paul Richardson being back, and also Chris Thompson he's starting to understand that this is probably the end of his time in Washington. I'm gonna be kind of sad to see him go. He's been one of our best players offensively. When he's healthy, that's always been the issue with him, is health. But when he's been healthy, especially when Kirk was here, that's when he was at his best, because Kirk knew how to get him the football in the timing and rhythm of the play. I'll never forget the start of the season for Chris Thompson back in 2016 when he was tearing the league up. At one point, we were talking about this guy as a potential MVP candidate. He was not going to win the award, obviously, but the fact that we were even talking about Offensive Player of the Year, MVP candidate, and Chris Thompson in the same breath just goes to show you how dominant he was. I mean, there were games where he had almost 200 yards of total offense. Remember the Raiders game on a Sunday night where we destroyed the Raiders, and Chris Thompson had 2 touchdowns, including like a 77-yarder on a catch and run. He had another one early in the game where he caught the little route out into the flats and got up the field and got into the end zone. It was a massive night, and there were plenty of games in 2016 before he ultimately got hurt in the Saints game that looked like that game. Or was it 2017 he got hurt in the Saints game? Whatever the case may be. I think 16 he played the entire season. But he's been really good for us, and he's starting to kind of reflect on his time in Washington, and he's also starting to realize that these could be the final 3 games he has in the Redskins uniform. We'll see what the offseason holds for Chris Thompson. But in any event, I wanted to get to a few comments from yesterday's show. Thought there were some interesting comments left, so we'll jump into some social media maneuvers real quick and get out of here. So the first one I wanted to answer was from Charles Edwards. He writes, I got a question. You think Lovie Smith would be a good head coach or defensive coach for the Redskins? No. Now, defensive coordinator? Yeah, maybe, but I think Lovie's at the point now where he's not looking to be anybody's D coordinator at any level. All right, he's a head coach at Illinois right now. If Lovie Smith's going to be a coach, he's going to be a head coach. When you've been a head coach for that long, it's damn near impossible to go back to being somebody's subordinate. You know, it's tough to answer to somebody when you've been the guy for as long as Lovie Smith has been. I think he had like an 8-9 year run in Chicago, turned around, had another 3-4 year run in Tampa, and now he's at Illinois. There's no way that this guy's looking to be anybody's D coordinator. And right now, I don't think he's a head coaching candidate in this league either. He's had a couple of failed stops. Most notably, Tampa Bay didn't get it done there. I don't see Lovie Smith being on anybody's radar right now as a head coaching candidate in the NFL. Lorenzo Simpson says, with the new head coach, would Bill Callahan be released or go back to O-line coach? I think I mentioned this before and I've talked about this, but I'll reiterate this again. If Callahan doesn't get the job, there's no way he's staying on board. All right. Rarely do you see a guy get promoted to head coach in season after the head coach has been fired. And then when the next guy comes in and they get demoted, they go back to being a line coach or a positional coach. Normally, the next guy that comes in here wants to hire his entire staff himself, and that means guys that were here previously are out the door. And normally you have a bruised ego. You know, you felt like you did a good enough job to deserve an opportunity to be no longer the interim coach and have that title removed, but rather now the permanent head coach. They tell you weren't good enough. You don't want to stick around. Your ego is bruised. So now, Bill Callahan, there's no way he's going to remain on board as the Redskins offensive line coach. And remember, he almost didn't come back last year because he didn't like Jay Gruden. You know, the only reason he came back was because he had another year left on his deal. I think he's gone, and so are probably most of the other guys on this staff as well. Let's see. Kalen Meekins says, Smash Mouth Football. I want to see it. Asses laid to the dirt every other play. I have no problems running the football so long as the chains move. I'm a fan of the nasty attitude that comes with that style of play. He says, in quotes, yeah, we're running it. So what? Stop it. You break spirits like that. You bruise egos. The side where we need innovation is on the defense. Go to a 43 and let those animals be just that. I want to combine that with another comment that was sent to me by David the Real Thomas. He says, David Shaw has coached has always coached the offensive side of the ball. Louie T, please start Googling these guys you talk about. Also, Doug Williams is the VP of player personnel. That's above Kyle Smith's head of the college scouting department. He says, don't forget John Dorsey was with the Chiefs also. So let me dissect this comment and then kind of bring the two together. So first he talks about David Shaw being on the offensive side of the football. And I need to Google him. Let me stop you right there. I don't need to Google David Shaw. I've watched him coach at Stanford. I know he's an offensive guy. Let me ask you something, because I referenced him as a defensive-minded guy. Here's why I say that. Tell me the difference between John Gruden and Mike Zimmer. Can you tell me the difference? One's supposed to be offensive-minded and John Gruden, the other's supposed to be defensive-minded. They both run the same kind of offense. You could lump in Bill Callahan with that group right there. He's an offensive-minded guy. Do you feel like Bill Callahan's offensive-minded by the way he coaches, by the way he goes out and has his team execute? Or do you see him as a more of a conservative defensive-minded guy that looks to run the football, not turn it over, play it close to the vest, and try to win the football game 17-13? Which one do you think of when you think of Callahan, when you think of John Gruden, and when you think of Mike Zimmer? You think of defensive guys, okay, even though offensively, Callahan and Gruden fit into that category. They play a brand of football that lends itself to playing close to the vest, more of a defensive-minded approach. Hey, don't put the defense in a bad spot. Let's run the football. Let's keep the defense off the field. Let's control time of possession. That's what defensive-minded coaches do. That's what David Shaw does, okay? That's why I made that reference. I don't need to Google anything. If you want me to be petty, and look, I'm not trying to come down hard on you, okay? But if I wanted to be petty, I could tell you that Doug Williams isn't the VP of player personnel. He's the senior vice president, okay? We want to get technical, but I'm not looking to do that. I'm not looking to be petty. Bottom line is, in order to play the brand of football that David Shaw would come in here and want to play, and you know what? There's another comment that I want to kind of link in with that one. It's a really good comment. So let me go and snag that one because it kind of falls in line with what I was talking about yesterday, and I want to reiterate that again. It comes from Daddy Smokes Yams. He says, I agree with you on the point. You must be able to pass effectively in this league. If you have a guy like Breeze, Watson, Wilson, Rodgers, or Mahomes back there, then go ahead and run it 40 times. No problem, he says, because when it's 3rd and 8 or the defense is stinking it up, you're confident in those guys' ability to go out and make plays with their arms. And that's all I'm saying is a lot of you guys seem to be stuck in this 1986, 87, 88, 89 frame of mind. You want to bring back the Hogs, and this isn't the Hogs, okay? That's not who we are anymore, and this is not 1989. This is not 1994. Teams don't win like that on a consistent basis anymore. You heard all those quarterbacks that Daddy Smoke Yams rattled off? There's a reason those teams, and it's not by coincidence. You don't see the Alex Smith-led Kansas City Chiefs making it to the Super Bowl. Yeah, they make it to the playoffs. Yep, they made it to the playoffs and won their division. They didn't win playoff games. Why? Because they had to run the football and they played conservative and close to the vest, and they didn't have a quarterback that could throw the football effectively down the field, and they lost games when it mattered. You have to have a quarterback. There's a reason the same damn teams play in the playoffs generally year in and year out. Drew Brees and his group is going to probably be in there somewhere. Patrick Mahomes and his group, Watson and Rodgers. And there's a reason these quarterbacks and their teams, Roethlisberger, when he's healthy, the Steelers are usually in the playoffs. There's a reason those teams show up year in and year out, because they have a quarterback that can control the game with his arm, throw the football when need be. Yeah, it's great if you can hand it off, 25 times in a game, like the Steelers would do with Le'Veon Bell when he was at his peak in Pittsburgh. But guess what? Like Daddy Smoke Yam said, when it was 3rd and 8, you got to be able to throw the football, and Roethlisberger could do that with the best of them in this league. We're not at that point right now. You can't turn around and hand it off 1st down, 2nd down, and then on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. And Dwayne talked about that. He said, look, with the way the offense is being called right now, I'm cool with it. Whatever the coach draws up, whatever they call, I'm going to run it. But it does make my job a little bit tougher when we don't get good hits on 1st and 2nd down, and we run it on 1st and 2nd down, and now it's 3rd and 8. and it's 3rd and 9 or it's 3rd and 12 and they're asking me to go bail us out. But, that's my job and I'm happy to go and do it. But that's not where we are right now. That's not who we are as a football team. And it's hard to win consistently unless you have an elite quarterback doing it that way. So anyway, I thought those were all good comments. Also, there were a few more that I wanted to read. And Doug Williams, I talked about elevating Kyle Smith, and I think I said this already. As a matter of fact, I'm 100% sure I said this, that Doug Williams' title is higher of that than GM, okay? So technically, if you go on the totem pole where Doug Williams is, technically, he's higher than GM. I'm looking for them to promote Kyle Smith. All right, he's the guy that right now is in control of the college scouting. So it would make more sense that you would kind of marry that job and elevate him and give him the job of finding these college players, bringing them in here, but also relying on Alex Santos, who's in control of the pro side of scouting and pro side of personnel, and have them kind of marry together and figure out this thing moving forward. So if you like the guys in the building, and I like Alex Santos, and I don't have a problem with Kyle Smith, I say you elevate from within and you keep the ball rolling and you keep Doug where he is if you're comfortable with that. I know some of you want to move on, want to bring guys from the outside. As a matter of fact, there was a comment, if I can find it, that someone talked about, look, man, I don't want any of these guys back. I want to move on from everybody in the front office and kind of start anew. So, and I can see it from both ways. I get it. Here's another comment that I did want to read from Aubrey44. He says, my wife went to a birthday dinner tonight, which was yesterday. He says, with a coworker, he says, and ran into Daniel Snyder, Doug Williams, and yep, Bruce Allen was there. I live in enemy territory, he says, Dallas, Texas. Go figure. And so that's where the league meetings are, up in Texas. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. But he also made reference that Bruce Allen was there. As I mentioned, even if Bruce is moved on from, it's not going to be a messy divorce. Bruce and Dan are still chums, okay? They're still buds, all right? So, like I said, even if he moves on from Bruce, I don't think it's going to be in a malicious or an ugly way. It's going to be done in a way that's tactful and done that Bruce leaves with his respect, pride, and ego intact, which means either he resigns or he retires. So I don't anticipate a firing taking place. So the fact that they were at dinner together doesn't shock me, nor does it surprise me. So it makes a lot of sense. I'll take a couple more comments that I wanted to read from. One is from my man Taylor Bouchard. He says, Lou, I gotta ask, man, how would you feel if we promoted Alex Smith to a coaching position or possibly a management position? Also, out of all the coaches that are catching steam, who would you want hired and why? So I answered the latter of that question, which was I wouldn't mind taking a stab at Eric Bieniemy, all right, or as Chris Berman used to call him, Eric sleeping with Bieniemy. I wouldn't mind taking a stab at him. Talked about all the reasons why yesterday on the show. So if you're looking for reasons as to why I would be comfortable with him being in the mix, look no further than the video that we did yesterday to why I would like to bring him in here. He's innovative. He's creative. He's coming from a coaching tree that has had success in this league. And anybody that's been under Andy Reid, I know they know creative ways to set up offense. So feel good about that. And also, he asked about the Alex Smith situation. We've heard Alex Smith and him being mentioned, and someone else in the comment section talked about Alex Smith and his input as in the Eric Bieniemy angle, because Alex Smith worked closely with Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, knows him very well, and a lot of people are connecting dots as to why Eric Bieniemy all of a sudden has become a hot name within Redskins circles, and they think Alex Smith has a little bit to do with that, and I've actually heard some outlets talking about that. Bottom line is, do we know Alex Smith as a managerial figure? Do we know what he's capable of? Like, I don't want to just blindly start giving out jobs to guys randomly. Like, there's no body of work there that suggests that Alex Smith is competent nor capable of having a role, anything more than someone that the players can talk to and rely on as a confidant and give them some insight as to the inner workings of an NFL season, how to prepare, how to go about your business as a professional on and off the field. But outside of that, do you guys trust Alex Smith in a role where he is necessarily making decisions that impacts this team? I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. And I can tell you right now, there's no way in hell Alex Smith wants to be a coach. I can all but assure you of that. If he's going to do anything in any capacity with a football team, Redskins or someone else around the league, it's probably going to be in some kind of front office capacity. And right now, I'm not sure I'm willing to relinquish that kind of power to a guy like Alex Smith. I just don't. What makes you guys comfortable? I'd love to hear from you guys. What makes you comfortable enough to have Alex Smith in a role? And we don't even know what that role would be and what his title would be, but I don't really know if I'm comfortable with that right now. So that's all I wanted to talk about. And great comments, as I've said before. Keep them coming. Social media maneuvers. Always love reading you guys' comments and spitting them back out on the air and reacting to some of them. So please continue to send your comments. Love reading what you guys have to say. That being said, that's going to do it for the Redskins Nightly News. Remember, we're Skins fans, and we got skin in the game. Why? Because we're Skins fans for life. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, like this video. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Share this video if at all possible. Also, check out the Louie T Network podcast if you haven't done that already. And also, make sure that you join me tonight, 8 p.m., as we will be going on live for the Redskins Report as I open the forum and the floor to you guys and allow you guys to have at it. So I look forward to seeing you guys, talking to you, and chopping up with you a little bit later on tonight. In any event, I'm going to go out to the side. This has been the Redskins Nightly News. I'll see you guys a little bit later on. Have a good one. Louie T.